Welcome to the Answers Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Hey, welcome back to the show. I appreciate everyone. I started a new podcast that you can expect to see live this week. It's called the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. It is based on a business that I started with my partner, Rod Kuntz, back in, I suppose it was February now. And it's developed into a curriculum that we teach to small or large companies, but we also teach it at the local high school. Hopefully get our youth involved in what it's like to be an entrepreneur, at least get their mindset going that way. I think there's so many opportunities in life to take advantage of. Oftentimes when I'm getting ready to do an interview, I always talk to my guests for a minute or two and just put them at ease or vice versa and get to know each other for about 30 seconds. But I feel like I've already done a complete interview with my next guest, and sometimes you realize, and by the way, this happens in life. You realize usually within the first 15 to 30 seconds if you're going to get along with this person or not, or if you feel like there's going to be a lifelong friendship or opportunity or a connection. And I always say go with your instincts, because your first initial instincts are typically right. And I've got Anish Majumdar on the line today. And Anish, I'm so happy to have you. Literally, I feel like, gosh, I've known you forever. You're so easy to talk about. Like I said, you're going to have to convince me you're an introvert, because I know you're not. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jim. I do feel like we've had like an in-depth conversation before we even got rolling here. But, it's interesting. I could not agree more with what you said about how, so much of successful business, successful
recording
life,
in progress.
It really comes through. So much of that comes through to trusting that initial intuition that you have, that initial thing, And one thing I will always tell the people that I work with is that when you find someone that you respect, when you look at what their journey is, and you don't have to fake that, you don't have to push or any of that. You can just say, man, that's a journey that I can look up to. Then the business of getting along with someone or the business of doing business becomes so much easier. And Jim, that's one of the advantages I think this conversation has, because yes, I've spoken to other people, I've spoken to other podcast shows, etc. But sir, your journey, I just want everyone hearing this, if you don't know this, you have walked the talk of what you're talking about 100 times over. And that to me is one of the biggest differentiators about what you're bringing to the table, because there are podcasts for entrepreneurs, but there's podcasts for entrepreneurs that are created by people who are fresh out of college or whatever. They have no idea what it's like to stare that blank business plan, or to be like, okay, you know what? I'm into wine. Let's go. Let's make this happen. Yeah. What it actually requires. And so a big heads off to you, because I felt even before we jumped on this conversation, I was like, oh, I want to get as much juice and genius from this guy as much as it is, hopefully sharing some nuggets with your audience here that will help them as well in terms of getting ahead. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate you saying that and pointing that out. It's been a long journey, but I've had a lot of fun on the journey, and I look forward to I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm 54, and I've got a lot of irons in the fire here, but I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm excited about it. But what's great, to your point, is that I've paid some dummy tax so I can help people not make those mistakes. I like your term, fraudulpreneur. I hadn't heard that before. On the opposite end of that too, and I want to encourage others that have experience in any background, is, you probably know what you're talking about, and don't be afraid to share those nuggets of wisdom to others. And because it's easy to get what I call imposter syndrome. And sometimes we have to pinch ourselves, like, why are they asking me for advice? Or why am I good enough to be a consultant or to be an authority on this? And that's imposter syndrome stepping in and making you feel doubtful of your experience. So I want to encourage you to get past any doubt you might have. If you bring something to the table, don't be afraid to show it and share it and get involved with people and help them. It's why I started this podcast. Anish, I'm glad that you pointed that out. But look, it's not about me today. So we're gonna extract some wisdom from you, and would love to hear. You've heard some of my shows, so I want to hear some of your background before we dig into some of the content that we really want to know about today. So give us some
Sure.
background on you and how you got here and why we're talking today.
So today, me, my team, and we've helped a little over 2,000 people break out of what we call kind of job search hell, which means showing people another way of getting what they want that doesn't require immediately going to the job boards and sort of, encapsulating everything that you do on these kind of cold applications. We were talking a little bit about this before. I am shocked and surprised to this day. I've been a career coach now for over 12 years. I still could not be more shocked at the way my life has turned out because it was never part of the plan. I grew up in Montreal, Canada, to some very conservative Indian parents. I grew up and, I saw my mom deal with schizophrenia and all of this. And acting became, for me, at 15, 16, the first sort of outlet. I realized, oh my gosh, I could communicate so much of what was in my heart and soul through the lens of different characters. And I learned how to, even though I was shy, even though you don't believe it, even though I was shy, learning how to stand for a message, learning how to communicate with a group of people. You could feel an audience change, And so that set me on a path. It set me on a path throughout the U.S., Canada, touring with Shakespeare in the Park. Along the way, I started building out a career as a journalist. My mom had been an English teacher before she took sick. And before she really took sick, she used to teach me every single day after I get back from school. And that capability enabled me to start freelancing, enabled me to start building out a career, winning awards as a journalist. My first novel, The Isolation Door, that came out in 2014. And in the midst of all of this, what started out as this sideline, right? Like I'm just trying to make ends meet, I got a family, young kid at the time and all this. And I'm working with these people. I'm writing their resumes, helping to use my writing talents to brand what they're out to and helping them market themselves. And I'm doing this. And I see people across the board. And this one guy, Arthur, he gets on, I'll never forget this. He gets on the phone with me. It's supposed to be just a standard resume writing assignment. He starts telling me his story and he starts telling me that, hey, Anish, I'm an architect. Again, I've won awards for my work. New York City, I spent over 20 years at one company. They're letting me go. I'm supposed to be looking for a job right now when I haven't looked for a job in over 20 years. So I feel absolutely, talking like a fraud, I feel like a fraud. Mm-hmm. Not only that, I feel like a failure and so stupid because I gave these people the best of my creativity, the best of my talent. And look, after all of their promises, which were so easy, look at what they actually left me with, right? And I got off the phone with him and I realized, like, I could write him the best resume on planet Earth, but it's not going to change the core thing here because it's not going to change how he's doing it. It's not going to change the outcomes he gets or any of the suspicion of being an age-old candidate, all the stuff that people deal with. And so at that moment, because by that point, I'd also spent most of my life, hustling for opportunities, I said to myself, maybe there's a better way to do this. And so it started this obsession in me to start learning from not just people who are experts in hiring, but entrepreneurs, people who've made it, figuring out what's your methodology and figuring out, and I think this is where my zone of authority comes in. I'm able to look at those areas that other people shut down on and say, you know what? Because I understand the mind of a job seeker, because I understand the mind of an executive, I can look at this, I can take my learning and I can transform it into something that's actually going to work for you. So even if you've never considered yourself an entrepreneur, I can show you how to take a truly entrepreneurial perspective here on this strategy, scale it up in a way that works and how it makes sense. It took about 6 years to put all of the pieces together. And I was working with clients throughout all of that. Nowadays, we're using things like automation over LinkedIn and all of this to scale up the messaging and control that. But really at the heart of it, it's always been the same. I really do believe that as your career goes, like you told me that, at the end of this amazing career, you still feel like a student, but in a good way. That's the way I want everyone in their journeys to feel. Like I want them to feel safe and secure in a way that I do today, but I certainly didn't earlier in my career, to say, you know what? It's okay. Like if I lose this job or if there's a merger or something, or if I decide to take a risk or become a mom and raise a child and make that amazing sacrifice, I know that I can generate as good or better relatively easily. And I can do it anywhere in the world. So once I experienced that, and once I started working with a couple of people where the lights started to go on, it changed everything. It became so it became so rewarding to me in a way that actually nothing I'd ever done before had, because as much as, I'm still a writer, I still do all of that. I'm wholly engaged in it, but there is nothing like the one-on-one change of being able to look at someone and say, hey, you know what? They were ready and they pulled off something here that they wouldn't have been able to before. And now that they know it, they have a little bit of that Super Mario Brothers when you get one of those invincibility, stars, like they get it. They understand, like, okay, this is the real way the game is played. This is what's actually here. And once that happens, it's a change that it's my hope is that for the people who learn it, the people who go through it, that it's a change that sticks for the rest of their life. That they stop looking at it once and for all as a perfect job, a perfect company, but they say, you know what? It's about standing on my own 2 feet, and it's about having a universe of opportunities that I can regenerate, scale whenever I need to. The universe is what's important. Any one opportunity is just operating within that, right? But there's no one anything here that is more important than you or what you're putting out there, right? That's that mental shift that I think in some ways it all still comes back to. So I know it's a long answer, but hopefully that provides a little perspective.
No, it's a great answer. It brings two thoughts to mind immediately. One is sometimes we need to be let go or set free from that career job because we're just in our own way and maybe we're not happy. So oftentimes that comes across as like a harsh reality when it happens. But when you look back, it's like, wow, I needed that kick in the butt.
Yes.
To relate it to my own story briefly, I was the vice president of Kettle One Vodka for 10 years as their marketing executive. And this was one of those companies. They've been around since 1691, 300 plus years old. They're going to be around forever. Our jobs were secure forever. And they went through a merger. And although I was prepared for it and had already written a business plan for a new company, I knew when the time to leave was going to be there, I had something else to do, right?
Yes.
Although at the same time, I was a little bit bitter. I thought, I put my heart and soul into this company, like your story of your friend. He thought, hey, this is my life, and now I'm gone. I'm upset about it. They let me down. I gave them everything I had. I gave them my heart and soul. But what's crazy about that is I left Kettle One. It's been almost 15 years ago now, and I wrote a book this last year. And I included a lot of Kettle One stories, including stories of myself and the president of the company who I worked for. And I called the president of the company. I said, hey, I just want to thank you for that experience. I've put some stories in my book as lessons learned in life, and I really appreciate the opportunity you gave me. And he goes, Jim, you created all your own opportunities. We just gave you the vehicle to do that. And you don't have to thank us. I mean, you did the work. And I hung
That's
up.
That's a beautiful sentiment.
And I never expected it to come from him either, and it just made him more of a person in my life that I put on this pedestal because of his moment of clarity for me. But what's interesting is when we look back at what we think are perceived to be failures, I got let go and I gave him my heart and soul. Really, when we look back, they're learning lessons that we needed and we can utilize to become other things. And I'm so grateful that my time there was over when I look back on it.
Yes.
Once time passes, you look back and go, you know what? That was a good memory and I learned a lot, but look what I've done since then. And I want to encourage people that just heard your story and your sentiments to understand that you will look back and know that you learned something and you can turn that into something wonderful in life if you have the right perception. So I want to
100%.
I want to throw the question back at you. As people are thinking about their career move, what steps should they be taking to look for that next move, or what mental shift should they be going through so that they can get a place of positivity and walk into those interviews or those discussions in a different mindset?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are a couple of things that, regardless of where you are in your industry or what your goals are right now in terms of like a dream outcome or the next outcome, even if it's rising up internally at a company, all of this would still apply to you. I think one of the most important changes that anyone can do out there in the marketplace to get more visibility, more traction right out of the gate is to look at their brand, specifically what they're putting out on LinkedIn, on their resume, and also what they're talking about in interviews and in relationships, to change the way that they look at their brand from what I'm seeing over and over again, which is the majority of people out there, no matter how high up, all up to the C-suite, they're either continuously skills trading, which means that I was an IT manager. I've risen up 10, 12, 15 years. Now I'm at CIO level. But the way that I brand is as a tech leader who specializes in SAS and digital transformation, blah, blah, blah. That's skills trading. So that's one thing, and I'll explain why that doesn't work once it really has stopped working. And the other thing is people will brand themselves around secondhand entities, right? So I worked for Amazon 3 years ago. So I'm like, that's the highest profile role that I've had. So I am a Amazon like certified kind of programmer who can expert. Okay. These things don't work anymore because skills trading, that really only works when you're starting with zero experience. Think of it from this point of view. I've worked with IT managers. I'll look at their resume. But understand, I've worked with CIOs, CTOs. If you look at their resume at like, let's say the Fortune 50 level, they could have a one-page resume that doesn't have a single tech skill listed on there, right? And the reason why is because we are not asking a CIO to be Mr. Tech. We know you've got tech skills, right? I would know, you would hope that I know how to write a resume, but that's not what you're working with me for, right? You're working with that individual as a strategic partner to that business, one of the 5 or 6 people in that room who can move this forward and have that level of accountability. His specialization, what got him there, was his unique approach. But that's not, it's not about the tech. So if your brand, if this guy's brand, if he started asking himself, okay, technology towards what, right? Like I influence IT strategy towards what? What for a CEO, let's say, and I see people get intimidated all the time. I don't have the courage to talk to a CEO. You don't need to be a CEO to talk to a CEO. You have to have crystal clear understanding of what your process might be. So this person might say, look, what I actually do is I help preserve and protect companies in any marketplace through solving probably the number one thing they're not looking at, which is they're growing while looking at IT as a separate entity. That's not what I do. What I stand for is a proprietary in-housing process that turbocharges transformation and progress across area A, B, and C through driving this interconnected tech development as only I can, right? So there's 50 million ways that you can rebrand, but if you start thinking of it that way, if you start saying, look, what's a right way to move forward? What's a wrong way to move forward? What's a change that I can advocate for that is bigger than any one job I've had or any one company I've had? This now is very, very, very powerful because once you start rebranding in that way, you get to stop arguably one of the biggest things that can kill time for people, which is they're trying to echo their brands to mimic job postings. Job postings will lie to you. They are inaccurate, okay? What you want to do, though, is if you have a high-level process that can wrap around all the types of roles that you're in, but is bigger than that, right? Now you have not only a stronger brand that could work just as well for all of those roles, you now have something that you can deploy, something that you can leverage to directly build relationships with people at the high level without naturally running into, let's face it, the stumbling block. If I look at your LinkedIn profile and you have had nothing but a series of full-time roles and you're just networking with me, right? Well, buddy, what are we going to talk about? I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? I got 20 minutes with you. I've got clients all day. You want a job, right? That's the only reason you want to talk because there's nothing on your profile. There's nothing that you stand for aside from being an employee. So if that changes, if that brand changes, and if I as a leader, I'm like, I don't even have to agree with what your positioning is or what your process is. But if I look at this and I'm like, man, Jim stands for something here. This is interesting. That interest will allow you, me, if we want, to cultivate a relationship, to start the process of chatting with each other. And most importantly, it will allow you to, in that first relationship, in that first call, we say you have one goal. Identify those 2 or 3 aspects of pain. Identify what is really going on. As an equal, if we start this thing at, and interest is equality in terms of what we're talking about, this will give you the best possible chance to drive this conversation through your questions, etc., to find out what's really going on. And that's your leverage towards the offer, not your qualifications, not your experience or what's in your brand, okay? That is the real leverage. Who can identify the real pain first and who can align themselves to that pain in an inescapable way will most of the time get that role. And the faster you can do that, like the earlier in the process you can do that with people, the faster you're going to get into that outcome and the less competition you're going to have. So changing the thinking of your brand into this kind of what's a process I can stand for? What's an offer that I can move forward that would resonate in that way is a very, very, very powerful thing that anyone can do. And, I talked about job postings not being reliable. One thing that can be reliable, if you feel like, okay, this is great. Oh my God, where the heck do I start? Well, and one thing anyone can do, start studying not job postings, but actual competitors who are, let's say, 3 to 4 levels up higher than you, right? So start looking on LinkedIn for the top 3 to 5% of competitors who are, let's say, if you're in IT, who are in IT, who are, let's say, you're looking at their journey. Oh my God, you feel nervous. You're like, how the heck did this guy or this woman achieve all of that? Perfect. Look at those competitors. I promise you, a strong percentage of the most visible people, especially at the high level, they've already gotten this message. So you're going to start seeing in their brands far more of an ownership of the process and ownership of the offer. Study these profiles. Use the things that you're learning in these competitor profiles in terms of keywords, etc., to start bringing in those aspects that you can start using right now to turbocharge your visibility, and then bring in some of this process thinking right on top of that. That gives you a very powerful 1-2 punch that will both increase visibility, but also increase your perceived unique worth, unique value. Both of those are important if you're serious about kind of opening yourself up in this way.
I want to take a kind of a huge step backwards because usually when I try to present something, it's like I want to present like I'm speaking to a young adult, right? And a lot of people, if you don't understand what he's referring to as brand, we're all our own brands, what we stand for, our mission, our vision, and our values, right? So when we're talking about presenting your brand or rearranging your brand, we really mean how you present yourself. And don't forget, by the way, because many people do, right? They forget that they're a brand and that people are looking, right? And we have to consider ourselves, what are some of your favorite brands in the market and what do you love about those brands and who do you associate with and why? And then understand that you need to present yourself in similar fashions, utilizing the correct, descriptives and what's important to your career. I think it's incredibly valuable advice that you just gave, especially as it relates to what's forward-facing to people that are looking to spend time with you. And you're right, man. When I got somebody on the line and it has to do with business, and I know that I've got a limited opportunity. I don't want to trudge through the crap. I want to understand why they're there, what they're all about, what's important to them, and why we're going to collaborate, at whatever level this is, employer to employee, our business relationship, our partnership, any of that. I want to cut right to the chase because if I don't, all of a sudden I'm going, well, I got 20 minutes, this just needs to wrap up,
Yes.
But to your point, if you're presenting your brand and what's important, all of a sudden I'm intrigued, right? Because you've brought me into your circle of whom you are, right? And what you stand for. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I want to hear more. Because anybody, as you know, we've looked at enough LinkedIn profiles. And I'm glad that you brought LinkedIn because a lot of people ask, what platform should I be looking at and where should I be spending my time? I love LinkedIn as a platform, not only for looking for candidates, but also for posting opportunities. Because people are there for that reason in a sense, but they're really they put their business hat on and they jump on LinkedIn. Probably why I'm not on there very much. I try to keep my business hat off, but
Well, you're interesting. So if you're interesting, you can succeed not just on LinkedIn, but across multiple platforms. So that's always good. That's not a problem, Jim.
Hey, and by the way, you're throwing huge amounts of nuggets. So if you're listening to this show and you're not really paying attention, pull over or replay this because I speak this language and I'm listening to this dialect a lot. So if you're not in this world, really pay attention to what's being thrown here because it's so important, especially as we transition. And by the way, Anish, I don't know what you're seeing right now, but we're in a transitionary period of time. People are looking for great employees. We're trying to solve an employee market, a lack thereof labor, right? So we're looking for really good people that can fill a number of hats and spots. How do we present ourselves, or what are you seeing in the marketplace that will be of value to an employer?
Yes, really, really fantastic question. And again, in some ways, this kind of goes to the one of the themes of this conversation we've been having, which is, there is this logistical element, there's a
Yeah.
strategic element to moving ahead, but far more importantly, and underneath, is this mental piece, and always what I've seen in this great resignation type period right now, I saw it when I first got into business around 2008, 2009, and I've seen it at times since. In the times where individuals like us have the maximum amount of opportunity to rapidly make a move ahead, that's when the mental sort of propaganda amps up to the 11th to keep those who can be convinced in a negative way down. What I mean is, right now, a lot of the messages I hear around, and a lot of the things my clients will tell me is like, Anish, is this really the best time to be doing it? There's so much doubt out there. People are uncertain about work, but that's what you want. Psychologically speaking, in terms of generating something for yourself, you want to be talking to people you respect, companies that you respect and admire, when they're questioning, when they're like, hey, you know what? Our marketing strategy is in the crapper because 30% of it was events based and we don't have that anymore, right? That beginning point is far more conducive to a fast offer than the, shall we say, unearned sense of confidence that tends to infect all industries when things have been, quote unquote, going really well for a really long time. Nikhil, who was one of our clients, he recently negotiated a role heading up a facility for Tesla, and this is one of the most powerful things anyone can do. That'll give you an edge in these relationships, in these interviews, what have you. Tesla, so highly competitive, a lot of great engineers, a lot of people coming in, all of that. Okay. They're spending hours and hours, days and days preparing for these interviews. What's the right answer to it? Nikhil didn't do any of that, right? He followed our strategy, and our strategy was, your value is going to come from two things. One is that, just like you, your value to me as a, if I were talking business owner to business owner, you already have the value, because if I can pick your brain in the right way contextually for 30 to 40 minutes, I'm going to have gold to help me in my business one way or the other, right? Mm-hmm. That means start helping now instead of looking at this thing as an opportunity to help, right? So just start the process of getting in. So Nikhil was like, look, I'm not going to talk about myself. I'm going to spend most of the time asking questions. I'm going to spend most of the time moving forward, and I'm going to remember that my value is not encapsulated in any of the roles that I've held. Those are just up to date, some proofs of concept out in the world of the larger thing. So he goes in there, and they're expecting boop, 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 song and dance, let's go, let's present, let's pitch, and all this. And when they ask him, he's like, look, I don't know what that is. I need details from you guys, right? And when I'm looking at this, he's moving forward. And at a certain point, the interviewer who became his boss, right, was like, Nikhil, my God, you're asking a heck of a lot of questions here, aren't you? And he wasn't fazed. He was like, let me get this right. Elon wants this up in like less than 12 months, which is impossible. That has never happened anywhere in the world in this industry. You want X, Y, and Z to happen. That has never happened before. With all due respect, why aren't you asking those questions? Why aren't the people you're interviewing right now asking those questions? Because if we do this, we're going to be in DEFCON level 1 from day 1 all the way through if we have any chance of making this happen. So if that's a problem, let me know. But otherwise, I got 15 other questions here, 5 of which came right from the beginning of our conversation that I need some clarity on. The thing that people don't do is they look at this job title, they look at this opportunity, and they say, what I see on the page, what I'm discovering is the end all and the be all. The magic that makes us actually go into an offer is when someone not only connects and identifies, but the vision you have of where we're going with this fix, right? It's beyond simply the next 6 months or 12 months. The 2 of the closest hires in my company, the reason I hired them was because they came in, one person came in for a sales role, but the vision he had for where it was going to go, I could handle the sales aspect for 20 years and I would never have that. I fell in love with the vision, and he took it from a bunch of problems that I had to solve into, yeah, we're going to solve it. But we're going to solve it in this way so that we're all left better. We're all left in a place that no one else can, right? If you focus on that, if you focus really on holding the feet to the fire of the people that you're speaking with and to say, look, I have to vet them, right? I have to make it clear through my questions, through my conversation, that I have very high standards in terms of what I know is going to make a business that works, what I know is going to make a CEO who's going to get this right versus not. And the more you ask those types of questions, the more your value and your authority is being powerfully communicated there. Far better than made up answers or perfect answers. When you go to see a doctor, you don't ask to really see their medical diplomas or their specialties. You get their credibility based on the questions they ask and the way that they direct it and the clarity that you get through that assessment, right? Anyone can tap into that. So I would say for everyone, spend 99% of your time focusing on having an outcomes-driven conversation based on the questions that you ask. Get really diverse, in terms of the subject matter that you can ask about, the ways in which they're. Get them talking, get them feeling comfortable with what's going on, and start helping them right now. It's going to open up things like you are not going to believe. It shocked me when I the first role I negotiated with the CEO after I'd been knocking on doors for, at that point, 14 months and money was running out. First time I hung up the phone. This is after 2 calls, right? 2 calls, offer in email, like within 12 hours. I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, at first I was like, boy, I wasted a lot of time. I didn't know that this was even possible, that you could do this. But then second, it was like the greatest thing, because I was like, wait a minute. I don't need to convince everyone. If it's a dream company, I don't need to convince everyone. I just need to convince Jim. Me and Jim, if we have that trust, and you're like, dude, I need one person in the senior room who shares my perspective. If we do this, that's all I need to get the vouch that I need, to get the depth that I need. I can't guarantee that I'm going to get an offer or an outcome, but I can promise you, doing it this way will not only get you the offers and stuff that you want, you're building all of these allies all over. You're building all of these people who are like, oh, listen, there's one person you need to speak to. One guy who has built this thing as only he can. He's the guy. Try to get on his calendar, Trust the individuals. And the individuals will get you everywhere. But the more you kind of get locked into thinking that the permission of some third party or some grand poobah is going to be the one that's going to save us, that's where, especially in the careers, that's where people really run into trouble, because we can't actually control that, we can't actually control whether you working at Meta is going to be the perfect job for you. We don't know that, right? But we do know that over time, your instinct for working with the right people, for working with people that you care about, that is something that we can refine. And if we go after that, what we've seen over and over again is go after the people and the outcomes are better. Go after the people and the satisfaction is better. And the retention is better as well, And so in a weird sense, this journey has kind of removed a lot of cynicism I think I had earlier on in my career, because I used to totally think like that, like I got to get one over on people. I got to convince them and all of this, but what I realize now is like, just give me that 1%. Out of that 100%, give me 1% of the true believers. I'll be successful for the rest of my life. And so can you,
What I love about this approach is I'm not a big fan of having meetings to have meetings. I don't want to just jump on the couch. Hey, let's meet every week because we have to, right? And,
yeah, God no.
Right. And I don't like doing the dance because we do the dance. And in other words, oftentimes we'll go through processes because we know that's what we're supposed to do to make us feel good, or to hide our own insecurities, or to really not give the real reason for the purpose of the discussion or for the hire. And what I like about what you're saying is maybe the person doing the interviewing doesn't want to expose what their problems are. They know what they are. They know they need somebody, and that's why they're interviewing, right? Whatever there's a hole in the system, they need something fixed, repaired, they need to jump up in sales, whatever that is, they're not necessarily exposing it. They want to look at somebody's background to see, like, okay, are they going to be a fit? Maybe I can guess if they'll solve my problem. What you're saying, though, avoids the dance, the meeting just to meet. You're saying go in there with a plan and showcase what you can do, how you can solve their problems, ask the questions so you can relate that back to your own experience and show them that you're there to help and solve their problems. Because really that's what it's all about, right? Whether their problems is a shortage of staff or take their business to the next level or sell more widgets, whatever it is, if you can identify that through what the method is you're just talking about, you will not only save a lot of time, but I guarantee you, you could probably dictate what the offer is in the terms of your employment would be.
Big time.
Right?
Big time. In a crazy way. What you say there, not to get off topic, the image almost. I remember in grade 5, there was like the first school dance we had, and if you can imagine, it was like in the gymnasium. All the teachers were in the middle, all the girls were on one side, all the boys were on the other, and never the twain did meet. Well, the same thing is kind of happening in employment, because most candidates think, oh, you know what? These employers, they have all the answers, but they don't. They have exactly what you said. They have some problems, they have some indecisions, they have confusion, right? So if you, as part of your process of moving ahead, can realize, okay, part of my job is also to make Jim feel comfortable, letting me know what's happening, letting me know that the know, like, and trust line has been moved enough where we can actually get close in that way, right? That a thing anyone can do. I'll see this all the time is, people will get intimidated saying, oh my God, I've never talked to someone who's at this level. I got to impress them, right? But think of it this way. I looked at this I found this out as a journalist who was, oftentimes interviewing people who are very media savvy, hard to get their barriers to drop down, Mm-hmm. But the same thing holds true for it all. Don't try to be as impressive as this person. This person deals with peers all the time.
Yeah.
Be a fan if you're a fan, right? Yep. Go in there and be like, how did you do this? How did you get a freaking, race team car, off the ground, man? That's insane. Tell me what that's going on. Arc into a line of dialogue that is true with what you're really thinking about a person. And if you are like, I have no idea how you were able to do that, it's kind of intimidating, it's kind of crazy, right? Spend a couple of minutes talking about that, because holding up a mirror to someone's journey, giving them a chance to reflect a little bit in terms of why they did what they did, why they're making the current moves right now that they did, and allowing yourself to fill in a little bit of the blanks in terms of what you know. This is the context of what I've seen. It's interesting that you guys are doing that, because I was talking with competitor X 2 weeks ago, and it's interesting because they're dealing with that. So ask, what's your take in terms of what's going on here, in terms of what's there. All of these people that you're speaking to, no matter how impressive they are, on some level, they're making so many decisions in a black hole. And especially when it comes to the things that you specialize in or the things that I specialize in. I could talk to a CEO who's a multimillionaire, done beautiful work in his industry, but has been short shrifting his actual career and his actual career plan, right? So I don't need to find that out in some sense. I don't need to create a pain that's not there. I have to make this person feel that sense of comfort and feel that, hey, you know what? A lot of times, a great way to draw out that the thing that's going on there, draw a relevant parallel. Don't try to hide that bad role you're bouncing back from. It's okay. Like you got a track record. You worked a role that just collapsed in infamy right after 18 months. Fine. Don't take responsibility for making the imperfect perfect. Use that as an example of a company where, okay, here's what we did, here are the goals, here's what we accomplished, and here's strategically where they went off the rails. So knowing that, let's take a look at your situation, what you guys are doing right now, and let's see which of these indicators you have. Let's see which of these indicators you don't. You can use a bad company and a bad outcome as a powerful, powerful credibility builder for yourself and what you do, because company and people know, like, there's no real solution that works for everyone all the time across everywhere, right? So if you get to a certain place in your career, start using the quote unquote negatives and vulnerabilities. Start using that and taking ownership of it in a more honest way, and allow the people that you're speaking to make a kind of moral and mental decision as much as an employment decision, right? If you work with me, it's not just because you need a job. You're working with me because on some level, like, you want that sense of freedom you can't buy through money, or you can't buy through an opportunity. You want that sense of freedom and peace of mind that comes from having control over this in a way that people don't. If that resonates with you, I'm the only one that you're working with. Because there's no one else who captures that. And you don't have to, you could totally disagree with me. Some of the best clients I've ever had have gone on the phone and said, Anish, I'm only here because my wife told me to be here, and because this job search has been going terrible. It's like, fine, no problem. You don't have to be a believer in any of this, right? But are you miserable enough to try this step a little bit different? Are you miserable enough to do this next step that's different? And before you know it, it's like, okay, incoming conversations, different. Calls I'm having, different, right? The proof can happen later, but the willingness to say, okay, something is definitely not working. I need to start mixing up my toolbox there. That's the most precious thing. As well, sir, because you put all those coins down multiple times in your career in order to do that. But I would take that pathway over the person who basically did the same job for 20 years,
Wow.
25 years. And it's like, now I want to magically reinvent. It's going to be very hard to do that, you know? So
Yeah.
again, the weird benefit of hard times, right?
Well, Anish, the wisdom that you're throwing out here today is beyond what most people think about on a daily basis as it relates to where their career is going to go. And I want to give a real quick supportive story of what you do and why people should reach out to you and learn more about what you're doing as we kind of wrap this up. I was intuitive enough back in, I don't know, probably 1998 to hire a professional coach to transition me out of one career into the next. And
Mm,
one of my challenges was I was very, very successful early on without a college degree. And in that era, a lot of companies required a college degree, right? So
mm,
we learned how to overcome that, and I'll get to how you do that. But fast forward a little bit, had a couple transitions. I was sitting at a formal dinner with the president and the owner of Kettle One Vodka, and we were chatting and getting along real well and making light talk, and wasn't being intimidated by his role per your advice, right? Like, hey, you never know. Be
yep.
interesting, be more interested than interesting too, right?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and he says to me, he says, Jim, I really like your style. Do you want to come in for an interview? Now, I could have got intimidated and thought, wow, I've never interviewed with the president of the company, let alone the owner as well. And I looked at him, I said, Bill, we're all sitting here in black tuxedos drinking your apple martinis. Of course you like my style. We're
That's
doing the
great.
same thing, right? Um, but I went into the interview on Monday, and one of the things he told me when I met him, he says, "Look, if you're interested in coming in for an interview, I'd love to talk to you about marketing and how to market our brand." So that was a Friday. He literally called me on Saturday and said, "Hey, I can see you on Monday if you want to come in around 10 a.m." So I thought, he mentioned that he wanted to know, wanted to talk about how I could market his brand. Now, this
Hmm.
is an interview. I could have went in there like most people approach an interview, right? Like walk through my background. But
Hmm.
because of what you've said, I don't know, maybe intuitively I did it, but I developed a marketing plan, not knowing
Hmm.
much about their business. I showed up to that interview with a marketing plan
Hmm.
alongside of my resume, right? And so early in the interview, he says, well, what do you bring to the table? Most of well, not most, it's required that we have college degrees.
Hmm.
Where'd you go to school at? I said, look, Bill, I don't have a college degree. But what
Hmm.
I do have is a successful history with In-N-Out
Hmm.
Burger. 12
Hmm.
years, matter of fact. And by the way, I was the most successful manager in company history selling 1 million
Hmm.
hamburgers in the year. I said, why is it so important for you to have a degree? He says, well, it shows commitment to a project and that you can start something and complete it. I said, did I not just prove to you that I could start something and finish it, right? He goes, you're right. Let's move on, right?
That is amazing. What you just did intuitively there. That's like literally something that I try to teach my clients all the time. We use a formula called, when you're handling vulnerabilities, called acknowledge, isolate, and pivot. Right.
Yes.
So you acknowledge the truth of what's there. You knew, like, hey, you know what, this degree thing might be a stumbling block. Rather than running with it or trying to come up with some kind of phony excuse, you ran into that. You acknowledged it. You isolated it by very very wisely going a little bit deeper, right? And this is true for any qualifications that might be in a job posting, right?
Yeah.
Ask me why. Let me understand why that became a part of it. You gave this person a chance to talk about what those deepest drivers are, and then you pivoted it towards a conversation that's built on those deeper drivers, right? Not the surface. You're getting away from the degree now, and you're getting into what he actually needs in a partner here in order to move that role forward, right? Brilliant, because that is a way that you can gracefully, without antagonizing the other person, you can say, look, I'm taking that in. I don't have to agree with it, but let me show you where the commonality is, and then let's go together to a place where we can really understand it. This is very true because a lot of times you don't have to be, certainly, the best person on paper only gets the role 38% of the time. You don't have to have everything. But you do have to be credible in terms of alternate value if you can. You
Yeah.
do have to be like, yes, but here's why I think this is a better one, and here's what would happen. That willingness is really, really, really important. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't give themselves the license to have that back and forth, with an employer, because they're like, well, who am I to talk back or do that. But again, we're all kids in the sandbox, and we're all figuring this out. It's a work in progress, right? So if you can be forgiving to yourself as much as you're forgiving to the other person, say, hey, they're trying to work this out, right? Take some risks in that conversation in the way that you are. That's always a good thing, man. Very, very cool analogy.
Well, and I bring that up, especially during our conversation, because I realize that that's the role that you play in helping others, right? People don't understand how important that is. And some of it was intuition, and some of it was I had the right people around me to help get me through those processes, right? And by the way, bringing in a marketing plan, I said, look, I don't know anything about your business outside of what I've done over the weekend, but here's just how I would approach something through a marketing perspective. He probably never read it again after that day, but what it did do is it showed him that I had the ability to formulate something based on a problem and come to a conclusion and fix it, right? And so it goes back to what you've been saying this entire conversation, is that you can drive that narrative, you can drive that conversation, you can showcase what you're good at and not have to fill in the blanks on that application the way that you think that they need to be filled in, right? Showcase your talents. And Anish, I really believe that you can bring this to people. I'm gonna dangle the carrot out there now because we're gone kind of way over our normal time.
Sorry about that. I know there's so much good juice in this topic. So many human intersections, that come into play when we're talking about careers and moving forward.
Well, here's the thing. I want people to reach out to you. I want them to do their research on you. I want them to find you and understand what you offer and what you do for them. Because I think especially in these times that in my opinion, there is so much opportunity out there right now. There is an abundance of opportunity. And by the way, just to change a little bit of our titles that we've utilized, we're talking about job interviews and interviewing, right? But these skills also apply. They also apply if you want to start your own business, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to raise capital, if you want to get a loan from the bank, or if you want to develop a relationship with a business partner. All these skills apply in any one of those meetings or scenarios, right? So we're not isolated in just looking for a job. Utilize these skills in any one of those topics, and there's probably a dozen more that we don't have time to go through here. But
that's a huge trend that is happening right now, which is that, and I would encourage everyone who's listening to this, you want to start thinking about your future in a broader perspective than simply I need a full-time role, part-time role, consulting role, etc. Because you're right, the future will be hybridized combinations of all of that stuff, right? The future for you, let it be how can I get closer to having impact using my process, using my way? What gives me the best possible way to maximize the impact of what I do? And consider being broader when it comes to how this stuff gets structured, because we're seeing more in the best way. We're seeing more hybridized remote work, setting it up in a way that's going to, at the end of the day, if I work with you, Jim, I just want you to be happy. I don't care whether you're in the office 5 days a week, man. I want the Jim Riley magic here in as undiluted a form as possible, right? And so, and that's true for everyone, on an enterprise level, like make it easy for people, and this is one way that can definitely make it easy for yourself as well.
I don't know what, oftentimes you get in these conversations, you reflect on something. I remember taking a business call on my horse, watching my wife take lessons, and there's some noise in the background, and the guy's like, "What's going on where you're at?" I'm like, well, I'm not going to lie to you, but you know what? I was in the best spot mentally and physically. Yes. I was comfortable, and I was in a great spot to answer the call and take the question and go through the topic. So like you said,
far more important than the audio. I mean, isn't that the truth? Right?
You want the best version of yourself. By the way, I'm gonna end on this, and then we're gonna get your vital information here. My in-laws are at my house right now, and they're talking about, retirement, and they're close, and, it'd be nice to have some money after retirement outside of our retirement money. Here's the thing about the job market, and maybe this could be your closing remark if you agree. Right now, employers, I don't want to say they're desperate, but they're willing to make different exceptions than we've ever seen in our lifetime. In other words, what I had suggested to them, I said, look, you could find something that you fall in love with for work, in post career, and
Mm-hmm.
you could dictate your terms. You could say, look, I'm willing to work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from
Mm-hmm.
9 to 1 because I'm going to be with my grandkids by 2. From 9 to 1, and I want to make X amount of dollars because of the expertise I bring to the table, and I'll do that the
Mm-hmm.
rest of my life. And I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you that an employer will say, you know what, I will sign you up because what you've shown is a history of being accountable, showing up, doing a job, you've made it to the other end, and now you know what you want that's going to make you happy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you're dictating those terms because that's happiness to you. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
want you because I know I can rely on you. And I think we're in a time that we've never seen before where we can dictate our terms for bringing a
Yes.
value for value right now.
Yes. Yes. 100%. I've had a client, Gail, who absolutely fits the exact situation you're talking about. She's in her early 70s and thought, hey, I've had a beautiful run, Fortune 500 companies at the HR level, building these organizations. I'm ready to retire, spend time with my granddaughter. Well, the last role she had kind of screwed her over a little bit, and it was left with a bad taste in her mouth, where she's like, yeah, I could leave now, I can take it out, but I'm not. I don't think that honors the journey that I was on. I want to leave this on one more thing. So she was at a position to, again, I think the challenge there was she could have said, that's it, that was the last chapter. But she was like, no, that's not true. The chapters are going to be done when I said that they're going to be done. And so when I look at this, what she's doing now, instead of being like in these large kind of matrixed organizations trying to move these big beasts, she's working in a high level, highly paid advisory capacity with early and mid stage growth companies, going in there with these companies that oftentimes are largely, completely set up in a different age group, men in their 30s, hard charging. She goes in there and she's like the Oracle from the Matrix. She'll go in there and be like, Jim, you're not doing that, okay? And that's a huge mistake. You're definitely not doing that because that's what's happening 8 months from now. Listen up, kiddos, all right? Here's what we're going to do. Here's what the plan is. And they love her for it. She's having the most fun she's ever had in her life, because she never considered herself as someone who can operate in that type of a capacity, but she's young at heart. She has a youth in her heart and an endless thing that goes so much more than just the roles that she's had, So I totally, totally agree with you that right now, take some risks, take some of the right risks. Now is the time to go a little non-linear when it comes to how you look at your career, because you're exactly right. On the employer side, there's never been more receptivity, in years, for taking some risks and to take on a strategic risk of hiring someone like you, even if it's outside of the view of what I had, that's no real risk at all. There's like 5 or 6 priorities right now that I need to hire from. If I had the chance to chat with you for 30, 40 minutes, we have a straight line towards solving it. You did me a favor. You didn't bamboozle me into anything, okay? You just saved me 160% on average of what it would cost to actually go through standardized hiring of your first year salary to actually go through this. So just remember, guys, everyone who's out there, ultimately this is a win-win for everyone. You're not trying to put one over on anyone. You're just taking that extra hand, if you will, to start helping and then reaping the incredible rewards that come from doing that.
I love it. What a great conversation, Anish, and I appreciate your enthusiasm. I still think you're an extrovert, so you're not going to.
Well, you can't win them all, man. You can't win them all.
No, you're not going to push that one over on me. I will put in the show notes how to get a hold of you and your website and all that good stuff. And I just really want to encourage people to chase your dreams. Don't be limited by your own creativity. Okay, think outside the circle. Live your dreams. Live your values. By the way, if you're listening, I've got availability from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Tuesdays Mountain Time. So if you need an executive, I'm just throwing it out there, right?
Perfect.
Hey,
hey man, that's being an opportunist in the right way.
I'm a student of my calendar. I study the white space on my calendar. Like there's an opportunity right there, and I know on Tuesdays from 9 to 1, I've got opportunity. Mondays I'm locked, man. I'm doing interviews all day Monday. But look, we live in a wonderful time. And it's all about your perspective. And if you can turn that into a positive, I just was coaching somebody this morning, hard times create strong people. And this is a great opportunity to be strong, be an example for others, be somebody that they can follow and be that leader right through this cloudy surface that we're going through right now. And you will come out ahead, and so will others, by the way. And I think that's what we're called to do, is help one another and get through these things in a positive way and bring value. So, Anish, You've brought a ton of value to me today, as well as my listeners. I think I'm going to give a better lesson at school today because of it. So thank you for that. And
Anytime.
I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well, man. This is a really, really, really great conversation, and I'm happy that we had a chance to dive into some of these important topics.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's show. It is my pleasure and honor to interview all of the guests that have been on the Answer is Yes podcast. If you have enjoyed the show, please go on iTunes and subscribe, give a rating, or simply tell a friend about the show. We also believe in the message of our guests and the positive influence of their stories. As my own mentor and coach, David Meltzer, has taught me, spend some time every day thinking and writing about the things in your own life that you have more than enough of. You will find out how blessed we really are. Please visit my website, livelifedriven.com, for the latest updates about me and what I'm doing. Plus, I post a monthly blog about the many topics on this show. This podcast can also be found there. As I learned early on in life, what you believe is what you will achieve. Thanks, Mark Victor Hansen, and thank you, and have a great week.